VPN for sponsoring this video.
Lord.
More details at the end.
Arms of a
Carrie
goddess.
wanted nothing to do with the daily hustle and bustle of working in the city. Having to commute early in the morning for a job that was only a half hour away thanks to the absurd amount of traffic she had to fight through. To make matters worse, she was undeniably beautiful, with her shiny blue eyes and vibrant red hair that seemed to ignite whenever it went under direct light. In the city, that made her a high-priority target for catcalling and being followed around by less than well-intentioned fellows. Eventually, she could no longer deal with these issues, and so decided to quit her job and do what she loved to do the most: write. Thankfully, she had a sizable amount of money saved up and a good chunk of savings that allowed her to live comfortably for at least a year. In other words, she had 1 year to make it big as a writer, or she was screwed. Not wanting to live in the city anymore, she also moved out into the woods, opting to purchase a relatively small yet cozy cabin. Her family was understandably upset by this turn of events, but she did not mind their frustrations. What was done, as she told them. The first few weeks out there was a great success for her, at least in her mind. She wrote thousands of words every day for short stories, and even a big novel she had planned. In between her writing binges, she would take walks around her property, soaking in the sweet and natural scents that the outside world had to offer, taking inspiration from the earth around her and the occasional occurrence of a small forest critter that brought her joy. One day, however, when she was on one of her walks and a few miles away from her cabin, she encountered something odd. Beneath one of the pine trails she often frequented was a rather arcane-looking skull that brought her a great deal of concern and confusion.
So you looking at a skull like that? That's why niggas gotta mind their business.
She knelt down to inspect it and cocked an eyebrow as she looked it over. By all measurements, it looked like a normal skull of a deer, complete with antlers. There were two odd additions to the skull, however.
They got horns in the front.
The first was that there were two small horns that protruded just above where the forehead would be. And the second was that just below where its eye sockets were another set of eyes that were about the size of a human's. Hoping that it was just some cruel trick or some artistic creation and some abomination, she decided to pick it up and find out for herself.
Why the fuck?
Upon touching the skull, she instantly felt a deep sensation of dread surge throughout her body, making her feel sick. Carrie backed away from it in a hurry and eyed it frightfully as she stumbled to her feet and jogged all the way back to her cabin, all the while trying to ignore the feeling of being watched as she did so. As soon as she arrived home, she slammed the door behind her and locked it. She then closed her blinds and peeked outside through them to try and see if there was actually someone there, or if her mind was just playing tricks on her. When nothing happened after a few minutes, she slumped down onto her couch and sighed in relief, chalking the situation up to just being isolated from others for an extended period.
And this is why niggas need to mind their own damn business. You out here touching shit that you not even supposed to be touching, bro.
Of time.
Like, what the fuck?
That night, as she was writing, she was interrupted by the loud grunting of a deer. She chuckled, thinking it was just some buck making its way through the area. Her hands froze in fear when a cacophony of grunts piped up one after another. Quickly, she turned off all the lights inside, grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and went to the window praying to God that there was just a herd of deer outside. To her complete and utter dismay, she was wrong. Standing in front of her cabin about 10 yards away stood three individuals wearing long black cloaks.
Oh fuck no.
Adorning their heads
and look at that
deer
shit.
Skulls, the same type of deer skull that she had encountered earlier that day. One by one, they made the same grunting sounds from before, only this time they began walking towards the cabin. Understandably freaked out, she grabbed her phone and attempted to call the police.
Got no signal.
Tears filled her eyes as she saw "no service" written across the top of her phone.
Ass is grass.
In frustration, she threw it on the ground and returned to the window to see that they were nearly at her door now. their grunts louder than ever. She screamed at them to go away, that she was armed, and to just leave her alone. After her panic-filled rant, she backed away from the window, shakily holding the knife in her hands. Seconds later, she turned into a sobbing mess as the individuals antagonizing her began knocking on her door.
Please, just go away!
She screamed. The knocking became louder and more insistent as time went by, until just when she thought she couldn't take it anymore, it stopped.
What?
You about busting this
She asked
motherfucker.
aloud, surprised that the threat decided to move along. She untensed her body and leaned up against the wall to compose herself. Without warning, a loud metallic clanging sound was heard, and she saw her doorknob stumble out of the door and
Oh,
onto the wooden
hell
floor
no.
below. Slowly, her door creaked open, and in stepped the tallest of the three masked individuals. Even with his face obscured, she could see how distorted and disfigured his features were beneath the skull.
Stop! Please leave! Don't make me use this!
The fuck are you going to do? Like, nigga, what? The fuck are you going to do? I do a damn
Carrie
thing.
shouted as she raised the knife back up and aimed it towards him. He did nothing but stand silently and outstretched his arms as though he were a saint posing for a painting. In defiance, Carrie screamed and charged toward the man, knife poised to pierce his chest. Quicker than the wind, he swatted her hand to the side and followed up with a power punch to her gut, winding her in the process.
Damn!
She collapsed limply into his arms, heaving and gasping for air.
Jesus.
Chair. She heard him command the other two who rushed into the cabin. Taking a chair from her dining table, they set it in the middle of the room, and Carrie was gingerly seated in it. Defenseless and weak, she whispered for them to take whatever they wanted, but to just leave her alone as they proceeded to strap her down with twine. The goddess despises material goods. Divinity has no such need for such petty items. What she seeks is beauty, and the ability to create beauty. You're a writer, yes? Surely you know what I mean.
How do you know I'm a writer?
Is she a goddess?
Because the goddess led you to us, my dear.
Oh, never mind.
I don't understand.
Carrie muttered as she looked between the three men. Sculptures, paintings, pottery, buildings, books, shrines, all created with the arms of talented individuals. You should feel blessed. Carrie squinted her eyes at him, completely bewildered at the situation.
Why are you here?
She says you have lovely arms, Carrie.
She about to take her
Excuse me?
arms?
Tears returned to her eyes as her stomach sank. So much potential not yet used. This is what she desires, and you have exactly that. He walked behind Carrie and placed his hands on her shoulders, and with bony fingers ran them up and down her arms.
Oh my fucking
Carrie
gosh.
shuddered and swallowed hard.
You don't have to do this.
Carrie whimpered. I'm sorry, child. I weep for you. Truly, I do. His grip tightened around her shoulders, his fingernails digging into her skin and drawing blood. Carrie screamed in pain. But just think, you're going to be part of something so undeniably beautiful that this pain will become something to rejoice about. Upon realizing
So
what was going to happen to her,
So she about to take her arms? That's why it's called Arms of the Goddess? She about to take that nigga arms?
Carrie's eyes
I
widened
am beyond
and
confused.
she thrashed around, begging and pleading to be let go. But all of those pleas fell upon the ears of men deaf to her plight. Detective Holt walked under the yellow tape that surrounded the cabin of Carrie Wilkins and went straight inside. In the center of the room sat the woman in question. He shook his head and did his best not to vomit at what he saw. A ring of leaves surrounded the chair that Carrie sat in, and a crown of twigs and flowers adorned her bloodied head. Her mouth was agape, with a few berries resting upon her tongue. Worst of all, her arms had been surgically removed.
They took her arms. Oh my god, bro. She looked fucked. Damn.
And pools of blood bathed the leaves below from her still leaking arms. Holt exited the cabin, loosened the tie to his suit in frustration, and scratched his rugged graying beard. As he contemplated where to go from that disturbing sight, he was approached by an officer.
Detective Holt,
Yeah, she
as
bad.
I'm sure you're aware, the victim was found early this morning due to her parents making a surprise visit and found her in that state.
Do you have any news for me, or are you just repeating to me verbally the messed up shit I just saw? The young woman cleared her throat and apologized.
This was found on the table next to the victim.
She handed Holt a folded piece of paper that had a crudely drawn skull and blood on it. It read as follows. The time for the goddess to awaken has come. With her arms she crafts. But what use are arms without eyes, which wish to see her own creations?
They about to take somebody's eyes.
Cultists. Holt grunted as he peered back inside at the mutilated woman.
What do we do, sir?
Drink. It's gonna be a long day.
Nigga, what? Bro, wait, hold up.